Alright, hello guys. Today is the 16th of October, I believe already, and 2022, 1922. It's been a bit of a busy week, but obviously today I'm gonna try and actually stream things rather than making a recording and then putting it on YouTube. I'm just trying different new things. Like I said in my previous videos, I'm not a professional YouTuber. And today we're gonna talk obviously about the situation in Ukraine, but I'm a bit better prepared for things. Somebody's writing me something on WhatsApp. Give me a second. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I'll just let a friend of mine know that I'm streaming and he's posting back. Thanks. Anyways, we're gonna talk today about the situation in Ukraine, obviously. I'm gonna start by covering what's happening on the military side of things, because there's not really much there. Obviously, the Russians have started bringing in the new mobilized troops, but as they call it in Ukraine, mogilisation rather than mobilization. But oh, I speak so many languages. But at the moment things kind of slowed down. I covered many reasons why Ukrainians are not really moving as fast as they'd like to. And here obviously lots of troops there. They brought in already some mobilized troops. We're gonna talk about, there's a video I have today, I'm a bit more prepared from Russian sources, which has been shared by Esther Angel, which is somebody I know from UK, and she's obviously sharing a lot of videos and information she finds online on Facebook, again to make people aware of the way the situation is. And there's a video of them saying that yeah, those people they brought into the private military, into the mercenary groups that they hide from jails, or some of them have already been shot and killed essentially when they were brought to Ukraine and understood what kind of trouble they're in. They tried to get away, but they were shot, like violently killed. So at this point of time we covered why Ukrainians have been slow here. Obviously some of the mobilized troops are already starting to get there, some of them already starting to give up. There is videos and photos of them doing so, like simply just running off. Right, but things are slowed down also up, like northeast as well. Again, Ukrainians have captured quite a big territory. They are trying to kind of bring up the reserves. There's a very aggressive attacks which are happening by Russians here. They essentially, what they're trying to do is they're trying to draw Ukrainian troops from other areas by attacking, concentrating their attacks in here, in the hopes that Ukrainian troops are gonna leave other directions and start defending here. There's another thing, which is they brought in quite a few people. They say about 20 to 30,000 into this area somewhere, right near Belgrade, and essentially they kind of keeping them there as a threat to invade towards Kharkiv again. There's been this is some news about Ukrainians actually hitting the training camp with the missile fire from, and quite a few people dying there. But we'll cover a few stories about the mobilization, but they also trying to threaten kind of around here. And there's again a talk about moving in the troops into Belarus and attacking from the direction of Belarus at the moment. But there's been a talk about trying to get Belarus army to invade, but at the moment they completely refused. They essentially hired lots of builders and said, look, you know, you can bring in your troops here, we're gonna build you some barracks and you can stay there. That's about as far as our military willing to cooperate, right? There's been some news about the Chinese also starting to improve their relationships with Belarus over Russia as well. So they're saying like, yeah, build the barracks and then we can send our troops there. But there's a lot of like politics going on there. Essentially, so one of the biggest news in that situation obviously was the Crimean bridge. So we're going back to that. Yeah, so the Crimean bridge blew up a few days ago, right? So this is the pictures of what was left of it. So there's like two parts of the bridge has actually collapsed, if you can see here, right, broken half here. And many people go like, oh yeah, that's been, they arguing whether it was a Ukrainian rocket, whether it was like something Ukrainian submarine. There's people obviously discussing this in many ways. But personally, and this is my personal opinion, the Crimean bridge had fell through because it just broke down. So the explosion, if you can see watch the explosion here. Right, let's kill the sound a bit. Yeah, okay. If you watch this, say, look, this is where the explosion was, right? Which is, if you see, it's kind of closer to that rise thing, right? So if we look at the pictures, we need something which should give us a wider angle. Yeah, so the explosion seems to be like over here, right? These two have blown up, but people who watched it more, they say, look, they looked underneath, so there's no scorch marks underneath. The explosion seems to be coming from the kind of train area. People say that it probably was the Ukrainians who sent a truck with the explosives onto the bridge, right? But if we watch this one here, all right, there's somewhere. So there's a cars there right next to that truck. So when I was watching this, and when I watched people putting their opinions, they said, look, there needs to be to blow up the bridge to the point where it falls down, because we're gonna look up the bridge from Kherson. Yeah, this one. Yeah, Antonovsky. Yeah, this bridge, right? To blow this bridge up, they had to hit it with missiles and artillery shells, like over 50 times, they said. They had to hit it, and even then the bridge did not collapse. It's just that they've destroyed the cover of the bridge to the point that it's not usable, and it's very hard to fix. But they had to hit it again and again and again and again. So this is a very old bridge. This is not the latest and greatest. This bridge is like 40 years old, more than 40 years old. It's been there before I was born, and I was born in 1982, so it's a very, very old bridge, and it took lots and lots of explosives to take it down. And we're talking like full-on artillery shells which come in, they hit it, and they explode, putting everything to shreds. So to cause this kind of damage on the bridge, you really need a lot of explosives, right? But if you watch this video, you see there is a car driving there. So just before the explosion, see there's a lot of fire there coming from there too. But you see this car coming here, right? let's see. Yeah, so there's this guy here, this guy here, this guy here, right? If the explosion was so powerful, like would they say they required tens of thousands of tons of explosives, right? It would be this truck, because they showed this truck, but this truck, they said this truck has exploded. But that truck is all the way already going up top, so this truck again seems to be quite way off the thing. So, but who knows? Like, I'm not a geographer, but if one of those exploded, those cars on that bridge, they would go flying, like 10 plus tons of explosives. I mean, the force of the explosion, it would just send the cars off. The train would not just be exploding, it would be like knocked over as well. So an explosion is not really that powerful. There's a lot of fire there if we watch it, but there is not really a lot of force behind it, right? So my personal opinion, and look, this is before I go, like, you know, this is a video of people exploding a bridge in Germany. Right, you see how they're gonna go? Yeah. You see how it goes and it starts to bend through by internal explosions, right? So, and again, they did not break the top of the bridge. They actually exploded the things that were holding it, because these are the ones, and what they did is they drilled into the stands and then they put explosives in there, and this would made the bridge to collapse. So to make the bridge to collapse, and as we go, you see how it starts to bend. To make the bridge to collapse like this means that something is wrong with an actual stand holding it up, right? And over my time, my opinion is based really on this. Like, there's a when they were building a bridge, right? They were actually saying that, hey guys, this bridge is not safe. There was like a bunch of research done. You know, there's an article that's from say 2019. Was it 2019? Yeah, December 2019. So end of December, so over 2 years ago. They were saying that this bridge is not structurally sound, right? And when they were testing it, they didn't test it properly as well. And there's a bunch of other reasons. They're saying that something to do with the variations in depth, something to do with the way the bottom of the sea is there. So it's like there's a lots of what they say like there's like soft layer, and then you have to dig through a bunch of soft layer to get to the hard layer. They were saying, look, you know, there's no way you can do it in like a short period of time without risking the structure of this holding beams that's holding up the bridge, right? And there's a bunch of videos, people taking interviews. This is how they were testing it, different variations of testing, and they were saying that the way the bridge was actually tested was the way you would test a bridge like in 1960s or something like this. And again, this also depends on the certain type of the bridge. So like that big a bridge, they didn't build so much in that time. Sorry. But okay, stop streaming. Just so I cannot pause it. Okay, just a second. Anyway, let it be. And they show how this one is not really kind of tested properly. Can I pause the stream? Just give me a second. Okay. Okay, sorry guys, I'm gonna come back in a second. I'm just trying to find how to post the stream. Okay, just give me a second guys. Let me just get away for a second. Ooh, I'm making a mess. Sorry. I forgot to close the door. But yeah, so all the research they've done on that article, they were saying that look, that bridge is not sound. So when we are talking about the bridge overall, my thoughts are that there was some structural problem on the bridge, right? Something went sideways, which led to, because they were actually running the train which was full of fuel across the bridge, and yeah, you see there's a train full of fuel, and you see these ones. Can we? Okay, open image in the new tab. See these ones, they seem they've got holes in them. So we can suspect something went wrong, and basically something went flying into the petrol that was in the train, and essentially that's what's exploded. It wasn't the. It was probably caused the leak or something like this, and basically just went poof. This is why we see so much fire, but not really as much force that would be going there if there was like multi-ton explosives on there, right? And this is why when we look at other images here, we see that there's only like a limited place where there's fire, but essentially something went wrong with the bridge. It was already collapsing, but this maybe something went flying or something like this, because it's like, it's not improbable, right? So people say I'm probably reaching, and I might be, but the bridge collapsing caused something to hit this petrol, and it just exploded. So the collapse and explosions are collected, but not in the way people think. That's my personal opinion, okay? Because like I say, people were saying that that bridge is not safe, and something happened and it went flying. So that's that. Right, obviously as a result of the Crimean bridge, some people do say that they were, yeah, here's the videos that they were saying that this is the truck that brought in the explosives, but people who look at this, they say, yeah, this is the truck in there, which is the truck has actually like two wheels at the back, and here this one, the one that showed that they screened, is actually only one. So this is why people say, look, this is probably either an inside job as well, probably possible, people not wanting to go to war, and for in the military who understand that this war is actually costing them their lives, and they're probably risking a bit more, maybe setting up some explosives, who knows. But I say, but the side effect of that was that the petrol went flying, but it wasn't the truck, because the stories like they don't check out. Right, so but let's go down to Europe. So this is somebody in Europe posting saying that, hey, look, you know, if we want to have a free life, let's stop sending weapons to Ukraine, apparently, I guess. It's like, and the West has been like this for a very, very, very long time. You know, it's like, And then, like I say, the West is dragging its balls over the sandpaper, right? You know, it's like, and Rosa, straight after the bridge, Russians have shot dozens of rockets. Many of them have been knocked out. This is a picture of children playing in the crater left by a Russian missile. It's in Kiev, right? So essentially, like, people obviously kind of losing fear over this, and not many, but some Ukrainian commentators are pointing that out, that people already got used to that. So the threats by Russian forces saying that, hey, we're gonna use a nuke, is like, well, yeah, okay, you know, there's not much we can do about it. Our life is going on, right? But which one is this? Yeah, this is somebody. This is a video which has actually been done by a channel I talked about, which is, yeah. So this is somebody talking about why they're staying in this Zoom and showing you where all the graves are and things like this. It's Громадське телебачення. That's a Ukrainian channel, but they do things with subtitles. So again, he's saying that the only reason he's staying back in his Zoom city, which has been freed recently, he said, look, nothing's stopping me except for the graves of pretty much all of my family, right? So this is the result of the West being so slow with providing Ukraine with the weapons. I mean, I did say by the beginning of this war, was it like about the first video I made was 3 days into the beginning of the war, and the one I did in English was about 5-6 days later, and I was saying that, yeah, Ukraine is going to win this war, there's no questions asked about it, but the help from the West is what is going to make the difference between Ukraine actually winning the war and in the space of a couple of months to the war stretching out for a very, very, very long time. And I pointed that out, and what we're seeing is with the West actually waiting so long for this war to end, waiting so long to give proper supplies, the war is dragging out, and what it leads to is lots of people dead. I don't think I have it here. But for example, in my home city, I just recently read something, the conductor of Kherson Symphony Orchestra, it was a very nice theater, drama theater, and it's got its own orchestra as well. In Kherson, it was widely known actually around, like, for people who like theater. This is like actually still used by people in Kherson for actual theater, so people used to go there. And the conductor of the theater, because he refused to work with the Russians, they said, okay, cool, we're gonna come to you later, and they did come, and apparently he got killed in his own home by the Russians who came in, and they just went like, okay, cool, you're done. Right, which one's this? Right, this is footage of a missile hitting the building with the German consulate in it. It's like, yeah, building containing. There's also, I think, Samsung or somebody else in the same building. So essentially, this is what happens when the West is dragging its feet. It's not that Ukraine is not going to win this war. That was never a question, because the drive to defend themselves from Russia for Ukrainians is much stronger than for many Europeans, because Ukrainians are living there. We do understand Russian, and we can use Russian sources, and we see what's happening in Russia. And like, okay, I have not been living in Ukraine for a while, but many people I speak to, they do not want to go to Russia. They say, hey, you know, I'm living in my small town, it's not a capital, and my small town is really, really nice. Whereas if we go look at what's happening in Russia, so as soon as you go outside of a couple major cities, things don't go very well. So we prefer to have our style of life, you know, where we have our democracy, where we can at least some influence over the local powers and things like this. It's not perfect, but at least we're moving in the right direction. Whereas the Russia, when the Russia they see is not what they like, and they don't really want to go there. They want to go separate way. They chose their directions, right? And the West, like waiting to like, oh, we're gonna maybe send you some air defense or something like this. And look, some of the arguments are very understandable when they say, look, if we're gonna give you, if we have to give you tanks, we have to train your tank crews and things like this. But like, look, guys, you know, it's like if you didn't drag your feet for the last 9 months, was it 9? Yeah, 8 months, nearly 8 months, yeah. If you started helping at least at the end of March, at the end of March, the West was like, okay guys, you know, we can't give you like 1,000 tanks, but actually Poles give the tanks to Ukraine, Czech Republic provided Ukraine with some tanks. So there's people from the east of Europe, they understand the threat. And they go like, yeah, we have to help. The people from the West are kind of sitting there like picking their own asses, waiting that, well, maybe Ukrainians can sort this out with themselves. Maybe they can make a deal with Russians and let them come in, you know, kill, well, maybe they'll kill a few 100,000 Ukrainians, like, you know, maybe some women gonna get raped. Oh, it's okay, so long as we can continue going with the business as usual. Russians are good, you know, as long as they rape somebody else, not us. Right? Without understanding that, look, we've been there, okay? There was this guy, he was called Adolf, he lived in Germany, right? And it's exactly the same way people thought about him. They were saying, look, you know, well, maybe give him have a bit of that, and let him have a bit of that. Oh, they kill some Poles, who gives a shit, right? You know, it's like, Czechs, well, you know, they're somewhere over there, they're somewhere on the east, you know. He's not really knocking down the doors of France. It's like, oh, okay, cool. He wasn't knocking down the doors of France until he knocked down the doors of France. And France didn't last very long. And to be honest, at the moment, Europe is not prepared for this war at all. Neither Europe, or maybe states, but even states are not prepared for this war. People think that they're fighting like some little insurgencies. It's like, no, it's a full-on cannons, tanks, airplanes, and yes, Russians have lost a lot of equipment, which I was saying that the Russians will lose a lot of equipment. When I was saying this, when I was making my first video in English about this war, I was saying Russians will lose tons of equipment because of the Ukrainian strategy, which was being discussed in Ukraine for quite a while, which is going to be, we're going to be defensive, we're going to drive them out, we're going to try and save our troops, and we're going to shoot up their weapons. Right? This is what happened. They say over 60,000, nearly 65,000 Russians are dead. That's by calculations, like, you know, this is confirmed kills. Right, so speaking dead, there's also wounded, there's also others, so they've been slowly replacing their troops from the original 150,000. They've used other professional troops. Those have come and gone. They're now bringing in hundreds of thousands of their own recruitees. In the meanwhile, as well as bombing the cities and kill people indiscriminately. Also, yeah. What they're doing is they essentially, once they take over the cities, right, they kidnap the children and give them to, send them to other parts of Russia. So here, okay, this is an article by AP News. Same thing, is like, they take the kids and they move them to Russia. Okay, this is beyond genocide. This is beyond crimes against humanity, as most of the people in Europe see. Right? You know, you guys people in Europe, in the West, in America, they think, oh yeah, it's okay. You know, it's like, no, this is like something which is not had happened probably not even since World War Two. Like, you know, the World War Two probably wasn't as bad to the point of attempts of, you know, like, actually no. I'll give you the war in what was it, Montenegro, like Serbia, Slovakia over there. There was a war there in Balkans. Right, not at the beginning of, at the end of the like 90s, beginning of 2000s, no, end of 90s. Right, there was a war there where the Serbian, I think, president has gone completely fucking insane and started killing people and children indiscriminately. That's the case, right? And while the West is dragging its feet with helping Ukrainians, that is what's going on. Right, and the thing is now as we go on, because obviously people go, oh yeah, but you know, we have this nuclear threat. Well, it's like, okay, was it President Macron? Let me just look it up. Macron use, oh shit, let's go to English. Macron use what was it? Weapons in case of attack. Yeah, they will. Yeah, they said for example, the guys in France. He says, look, you know, we are gonna attack Russia if they use nuclear weapons, but we will not use our own nuclear weapons. You know. Okay, cool, but at least something, right? You know, but it took them like 8 months to say shit like this. You know, the weapons they provided are like, okay, here's we've got some. You know, okay, cool. You know, here's like a 10. There's like 15 days, 10 of this, 5 of that. It was like, no, yeah, but it's like, and then they go like, oh, why are you using cannons so much? Like, there was just, today came up, one of the conversation which came up that, look, the German cannons and French cannons, they're not coping with the amount of shooting that is done by Ukrainian military when fighting, because obviously the NATO structure is like this. We're gonna send lots of aviation and we use the cannon as a kind of support weapon, whereas in Ukraine Ukraine/Russian war, the artillery is the main weapon and aviation is a support unit, right? So the artillery has to be used much more heavily, and Ukrainians say, hey, at least give us some like more artillery so that we can use it to your standards by simply having the numbers. If we have only 10 artillery pieces and we have to go up against Russian like 50 artillery pieces, you know, we have to shoot. We cannot just not shoot. We cannot wait for them to come close and destroy our artillery. But yeah, like, but the West is still jerking itself off, and I live in Germany, so you know, like, okay, what can we do next? You know, they say, okay, the Americans have said they're gonna give Ukraine a land lease. Okay, great, you know, we're gonna get some weapons, we'll be able to finish this war really quickly, get Russians out of Ukraine and just become a normal peaceful nation again, and then we can deal with Russians as is. We don't have to get involved with that. It doesn't happen. Again, this not only it leads to loss of Ukrainians, we're not talking just military, we're talking about peaceful citizens being killed, just civilians, just because Russians essentially hate everyone. It's new Nazism, right? You know, it's not even the Italian fascism. It's more like ex-German Nazism, like, you know, we hate everyone. And okay, this is the story. Obviously they have this mogilisation, and this one happened. This is a notice in Russian from one of the Russian chat groups, which has been shared by Ukrainians. And this is a news article from lbc.com, which is like around 11 Russian soldiers killed. Right, so basically what happened was that they was sent into preparation center, and what happened, some of the guys in the preparation center, there's a couple of guys which were not Russian in that group, they were from other republics, and apparently they say, yeah, apparently it's been caused by religious conflicts. It's all bullshit. It's just that the Russians that were there, they saw the guys that were not part of them, they were like of a different nationality, and they probably started treating them like shit. Not probably, they most definitely started treating them like shit. And what it led to is these guys obviously were like, hey, we're not gonna be your fucking bellboys, you know. You wanna do your own shit, do your own shit, but like stay away from us. But obviously nobody listened. Obviously they were like, yeah, you know, we're gonna treat you the way you want. And these two guys, they essentially, once they got the weapons that could actually shoot people in their hands, what they did is they essentially shot back, and they started shooting at them. That is more likely, and this is the big core of their mobilization is like, you know, so they are not doing very successful. Yeah, they have there was an article somewhere. Oh, this is somebody, yeah. Oops, this is an article, yeah. So this is the video where they talk about the part where okay, the sounds on. Where they talk about the part where they shot the criminals they have actually recruited to go to fight in Ukraine. Right, so this has been in Russian, but obviously, right, this one is, yeah, this is in Germany, the site, they have actually a whole article, but you have to pay to reach it. But their whole video, the whole picture there says is like they brought in the 90,000 soldiers, but they have no weapon, no clothes, because the Russian soldiers had to bring their own clothes often, no weapons. And so what will happen when they actually mobilize a million people, right? So they had trouble with supplying their soldiers with weapons, they had trouble supplying their soldiers with clothes. In some places it was better, like, you know, especially if there was like a TV crew there, but quite often it was like was not shown. I was watching the channel, I'll have to look it up, but there was a video by actual Russian, and this is what we talked about, is that this war is not about capturing Ukraine, it's about having a war which would allow the Russian government to say that, yeah, we're fighting against the entire world, which is they say now, and getting people to unite again around the government. Because I was watching a Russian channel where the Russian people saying, look, this is what's happening, and it was like, yeah, they are in their own bubble, but even their bubble is beginning to kind of burst. And there was a video which was showing about the new Russian tank factory, which has still got machinery from 1945, you know, 1946, you know, so whatever they brought from Germany, they still use that. You know, there's no automation whatsoever. Like, you have to use the machines by hand. If you've never done it, it's actually quite fun if you've never done it and you use machinery. It's good for if you're a hobbyist. It's not something which is good if you're building lots of tanks, right? If you do everything by hand. But they say, yeah, these old machines are going to be used to build tank parts and things like this. And obviously this guy he was Russian, but he was saying like his channel was like something not upset, disappointed Russian or something like this. He was saying, look, you know, in the 20 years of Putinism, you know, this factory which is supposed to be producing tanks and other machinery still has, you know, not just tanks, maybe tractors, maybe engines, whatever. Yeah, it has like, you know, it still has the machinery to work with, which is still from the Second World War, you know. And hammers, and they have the hammer which they would use to knock something out. He was saying, yeah, those hammers have been used to build T-34s. so the guy was actually a bit humorous about the situation, but also like very, very critical. And he was pointing out that he was showing one of the videos they're sharing, and where they were showing how well the soldiers are treated. But he was pointing out that you will not see those videos on the central channels because people know it's bullshit. But if you have a very localized area, which is like people who live in this big bubble and they want to believe, and this local on these local channels, they will say, ah, here's a video for you, like watch this and believe that. So it's like, but the reality is very different. The reality is more like this, that yeah, they've got 90,000 soldiers and they don't have enough equipment to put on them. And one of the reasons, so when people go like, this is the mobilizations, the people saying, look, let's bow to Russia, let's suck some Russian dick. And the reason people say that, like for example, Elon Musk, even though he has like said just recently, he said, look, I'm gonna still support Ukrainian fight for Russian independence, but he was also saying, look, maybe we should suck some Russian dick. You know, kind of weird attitude. But people who say this, who say like, look, let's not fight Russia, let's let them rape Ukrainians and kill, you know, they hope that the Russians aren't gonna bring that shit with them, but they will. They will bring, if they're not stopped, they will bring that shit to Europe. But also many of them say this because in the hope that, look, you know, they're gonna have like 1 million people army and they're gonna come and kill us all. It's like, sorry guys, no, they're already starting to refurbish T-62 tanks, which have been in storage for the last like 50 years or more, right? So they have to take rust of them, like, and T-62 is not the best tank ever. Actually, it was a good tank, but it was very, the way it was designed, it was like T-64 was a good tank, but there was like where it was a bit more expensive, and then T-72 came, which was like took all the best from T-64, but made it a bit, but removed certain things, changed them to make it cheaper to produce, right? But they don't have the equipment, they don't have the weaponry, they don't, more than that. And we're not talking just about clothes, we're talking about the fact that Russians have lost thousands and thousands of tanks and other equipment in Ukraine. Let me just look it up. Nope, wrong one, sorry. Okay, yeah, the losses of Russian losses, like in the last 24, by the time they wrote this, the Russians lost extra 5 tanks. Today they probably lost extra 20, right? So they lost 2,500 tanks, which were their best tanks at the time. They came into Ukraine with the tanks that ran, right? That's as far as they go, right? We're not talking about the losses in aviation. Obviously they've lost, for example, the big launch of missiles, like they sent about 80 missiles into Ukraine. I've showed you the video of kids playing, was it? Yeah, so this is the result of that, right? That costed them over $500 million, okay? But they're building missiles, they're building older versions of missiles, some new ones, because there is obviously a black market for the weapons, especially not so much for the weapons but for the parts, especially when they can use the parts which are not quite weapon grade, but they still put them into the missiles. there is a black market which supplies Russia with all sorts of chips and things like this, so they can build their rockets not as fast as they probably could, but even before that they were not building them very fast, so their speed has dropped significantly. But they don't accept those missiles, where there's still some people who remember how to do this. Many of the weapons like tanks like this, they don't have the people who can actually fully bring them back to life. It takes years to train that up, it takes years to restore that kind of industry, and they've pretty much destroyed their industries over the years. So when people say, hey, let's just allow Russians have whatever they want to have now, maybe they will come down, they will not, but letting them have it, removing the sanctions and not helping Ukraine will mean that in the next few years they will have the time to kind of put a bit more money, buy a bit more technology from the West, maybe build more tanks, we don't know, and then they will try to go again and again and again and again until they reach all the way to England. And the more you kind of step back to say the history repeats itself again and again and again and again. And you would have thought that with the modern history recordings, we would remember it. Okay? But no, the West is still dragging its balls on the sandpaper. But they're hurting. Obviously the main hurt comes to the West, especially to Europe, comes in the fact that Europe was heavily dependent on Russian energy supplies, specifically natural gas. And surprise, surprise, despite all the panic, despite everything, Germany says that the gas reserve filled to 95% sooner than expected. So this means that despite all the panicking, despite all the people, again, a lot of people were taking advantage of the situation. They're not really in gas business. They're only like buying and selling to make some extra cash. Okay, so there is that side of them, but people abused the situation. And again, one of the things where the Western governments are dragging themselves, they're going like, oh, how can we dare stop these people who are abusing this situation, digging into our taxes, they're making so the government's essentially having to spend taxpayers' money onto fixing this situation, while some guys investors who have nothing to do with gas, who have nothing to do with oil, who are only pushing papers, who have never touched gas or oil, right? They are essentially going in and like making a killing out of it by abusing the situation that is now. Right, but nevertheless, what we see is that because we had a very, very, very warm summer this year, like really, really nice all over Europe, right? I mean, today is 16th of October. Last year, last autumn at this time, I'd be like sitting in my flat, I'd have my heating on, I'd have my fucking heater on, I'll be like under the blanket, like with the coat on top of me. And this previous autumn and the autumn before, it was like quite cold year. No, not the autumn, previous autumn and the autumn. Like we had two pretty cold autumns, like really, really cold. Whereas this year, today's the 16th of October, like I say, and to be honest, I have my windows open for half a day because it was plus 20 outside. At the moment it shows plus 18 degrees. So essentially what we're having is that like it's a warmer weather, and this means that people are not using as much electricity, people are not using as much heating, unlike last year. So the gas reserves are much fuller now, and this is the backlash of planning, because I think they were planning that they will be using gas at the same level, at the same rate as they did last year. And last year it was like in the summer it was really cold. For example, last summer we had like there were nights when it was +10 for those who live in Europe. Like, you know, for those who live in US, I don't know what it was, but those who live in Berlin will probably remember that last summer we had nights when you had to wear like a couple of jumpers just to go up. This year was different, so the energy crisis is not as bad as people imagined it was going to be. People are still abusing the situation, so the market is artificially driving up, and again we're seeing that the European governments especially having hard times to take the hard decisions. They're dragging themselves through pains and suffering just not to take the decisions of saying, hey, if you're not part of the gas market, you cannot trade in the gas market. As a matter of fact, let's do it like this, because let's look at eToro, eToro.com. Yay, now I'm gonna, yeah, I am. Yeah, I've logged in into eToro, right? And oh, it's been a while. Watch lists. I think I've got them. Energy tag. Commodities. I made this one on purpose, right? And what we see, oh yeah, the oil is actually fallen, the natural gas has fallen a bit. Okay, well, oil is 84. Oh, it's fallen quite a bit, so I don't see why people are like complaining so much. You see, the oil has, like, once the news have come that the energy is coming in, so people are losing money now, hopefully. I hope those motherfuckers go out of business, or anyway. But the natural gas is still overpriced by a huge margin. Right, and we see that you can do this, you can trade in these on eToro and a bunch of other things. You have like, not millions, actually millions of people who'd be trading gas and oil, who have nothing to fucking do with gas and oil. Right, people will be like, yeah, let me just make some money, and this is what drives the price up. And the West does not have the group power, the willpower of the group to say stop, you know, to stop people like eToro and places like this from trading in these resources, to say like, look, oil, natural gas, maybe a couple of something other ones, pick some and say, look, these are the commodities which are not there for trading. They are there because they're making up the base of our existence. So if you're driving up the prices just so that you can make an extra buck, this means that this buck is not just coming out of my pocket or your pocket or any other person's pocket. This buck is also coming out from our taxes, because the governments do not have the willpower to stop this. They're spending our tax money. They're creating to basically subsidize us or even the companies that are actually needing these resources. They're being subsidized by the governments to survive, right? So the West dragging its balls on the sandpaper. I'm just not going to get tired of repeating that one. I really like that phrase. So like we see like the inability to act from the point of the West by not really appreciating what are the consequences of their actions, but also by not understanding the people they deal with, by not understanding the situation in Russia, Ukraine. Because let's be honest, most of the people who write their expert articles on Russia and Ukraine quite often don't even fucking speak Russian. They go some guy opens up an article in the Russian propaganda piece, and he goes like, look, the Russians have this much, and any person who's like half a brain goes like, yeah, but this is a propaganda piece. But it goes like, okay, cool, they have this much, so we're gonna take this decision, right? I don't know, but overall, I think I've covered most of the things I wanted to cover for today. If I didn't, I do apologize. Probably nobody came into chat. I don't know if anybody watched me actually do this, but I hope you guys have a good time. I've said everything I wanted to say, made my peace, and I hope you guys have a peaceful sky over your head. I wish you all the best, and I hope that the collective West is gonna stop enjoying their love of BDSM and gonna start acting like other human beings should act when they are being under threat. Thank you very much. Goodbye.